I remember sitting in a meeting with my co-founder a few months later after we started growing like crazy, and neither of us said a word the entire meeting. It was like there's like 15 VPs in there, and neither of us had to say a word, even though we've been the ones that control everything up until that point. And being like, this is pretty crazy. Right. Company's running without us, and it doesn't even need us.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Flywheel Effect, where we're sponsored by Vital. So Vital, if you've listened to my podcast, you know what Vital is. Vital is the place where home service companies, home integrators, commercial integrators come to level up their business, to drive profit, to drive ownership, to really make your business run in a way that you can focus on growing it instead of focusing on the details of it every day. Make your business work for you instead of you working for your business. So go to Vital.com and you can learn more. Today, I don't have Matt to correct me on my random introduction of Vital, but I do have another great guest. I have Trenton Hughes. Trenton, how's it going today?
Good. Appreciate you having me, Brent.
So Trenton, let him get a little bit more on himself, is, multi-time entrepreneur, run outsourcing companies, marketing companies, and also founded a networking group called TribeHQ, which I'm a member of. And so that's how I know Tribe. And it's fantastic organization that brings entrepreneurs together, and I appreciate all he's doing there. Trenton, there's a few things I want to cover with you today, but first is how's your summer going?
Appreciate it. Got a 4-year-old that's about to go into school, so we're just soaking up every minute of summer here on the West Coast, but it's been good. How about you?
It's going well too, and I have 2 4-year-olds too, and they've been in school for, have you not put your kids at 4? They haven't been in school at all yet?
She just turned 4, so yeah, not yet. She's about to go, and we have TK out here, about to go into TK.
We started our kids at a 2-day preschool at age 3.
Okay.
They did 2-day half day, and then it was 4-day half day last year, and now we're doing 4-day full day this year, so like 3 years of pre-K.
Oh.
Yeah, full day. So they'll be 5 in August, so like a year older than yours. But yeah,
how are they?
Transition some.
Yeah. It's a weird one because we have her in all kinds of like programs and classes and things, but not preschool or anything. So this is a weird one where it's officially through the state.
Okay.
She's going to school. So like, okay.
Public school.
Yeah, this is a new transition for us. How are your kids adjusting though?
Our kids are we're really lucky. Our kids are adventurous. First day of school when they were first, a lot of kids were crying. They had their backpacks on, they were excited, they charged right in, ready to go. My number one thing as a father is kind of what are the things that I want my children to be? Right? Like how do I think about them? I think I want them to be kind and happy, right? Like those two are really important, just kind of generally. But for me, what I really want them to be is curious or adventurous, take your pick, and resilient. Right? Like I'm an old dad. You're quite a bit younger than I am. I'm an old dad. When they're going to college, I'll be 65 years old, right? So like they got to be ready to live on their own before he's good. Death is coming to my life sooner than I like. So resilience is like really important. But the curious side is like, I want them to want to see new things and want to do new things all the time and not be afraid of new. And we seem to do that. I think it's just because we're like excited when we go do things on the weekend.
One of the things I'm curious about with that, I guess didn't mean for this to turn into a parenting conversation.
No, let's do it.
But I grew up pretty poor and not the best childhood necessarily. A lot of good, right. But like it was a little tougher. Divorced parents very young. Lived in I think 30-something different places. And I think I learned like resilience and some of this stuff through hardship. My daughter is not poor, like we're much more well off in a much more stable environment. And like what I wonder is like, does that environment need to be hard in order for them to learn some of this stuff or not? And I don't know if yours was harder growing up than what your kids have at this stage, and how do you think about that?
I mean, I think exactly about that a lot. It's funny. So like I wouldn't say we weren't poor. We were solidly middle class, and my dad ended up doing really, really well as I grew up as a car dealer. But my parents were divorced in 2007, so I kind of had split the household, go back and forth, whatever. My mom got sick when I was 13. She ended up with brain cancer, and I spent a lot of time all through high school taking care of her, and then she died when I was 20. So I was forced into adulthood early, and it wasn't necessarily financially, like I think the financial hardship or resilience is different, but I was forced to kind of deal with things younger than I would. And I think what you're talking about is there's a level of forced resiliency that can happen in someone's life. And the question is, how, as well-off kind of entrepreneurs that are doing good, can breed some resilience in a child? And that's a difficult. Do you think about that?
Yeah, I think like she hasn't. I mean, there's obviously like everyday things that you're going to go through, and you can just teach and embody resilience. But yeah, some of those bigger things. I mean, I'm sure our kids will deal with them too, but maybe not in the same ways that we did.
So the ton of things that I want to try to do is I try to stay out of their way and let them kind of deal with their own stuff a little bit. My wife who's kind of wants to be like, we can't let them go outside by themselves. They might get hurt. I'm like, let them get hurt. Send them outside in the backyard. My frame of reference is, what's the likelihood they're going to die? And if it's a low likelihood they're going to die, like, let them go. But
as long as they're not going to die, they're good. That's funny.
Well, I sent her this Instagram. So we went this Instagram post, and it was a picture of this kid. And the kid posted a picture of himself later on in life, right? It's like, of this kid. He had just jumped off the top of a ladder with a scuba mask on into a baby pool, right? And he said, this was my childhood. But he said, really what the best part about this is my mother, instead of stopping me, took this picture.
To remember that this is going to be one that we're going to remember later.
And let me just suffer the pain. And I'm like,
that's funny.
Okay, I got it. That kind of gives you some resilience. But I do.
Yeah.
I've kind of made a decision. I'm not going to snowplow them, like through or kind of or micromanage their lives as they go through things. I want them to go outside and play and do things and make some own decisions.
Yeah.
So many people just do everything. So how are you thinking about it?
She's already like tenacious and very brazen with like what she likes to do. So yeah, we let her do that. But she's also kind, and so we try to embody these things and correct a little bit where we can. But some of the things I'm thinking about is like because my parents got divorced pretty young. My mom ended up working 3 jobs. My dad was gone for quite a while, and we barely saw him. So I didn't get a lot of time with my parents. I'm just trying to spend as much time as I can, and my wife is too. So that's big for us at this stage. One of the things I was lucky to have, though, I did have a grandfather who had a building company. And from a pretty young age, he brought me into the office. I met all these people, started to learn how the business worked. And so I've even started to show her little things. Sometimes I'll bring her to dinners and things with people. I want her to just be exposed to different things this early. I don't know. We're also just taking it as it comes, though. Like, I read a million different parenting books before she came, and I don't know, most of them I don't feel like are relevant now. So it's like just letting it be. And we have our core values that we're trying to instill, and letting her breathe and be the best person she can, but have fun along the way.
I think the other thing is I don't want to be neurotic about what she's doing and whether she's going to be prepared for college, whether the two of them, boy and girl, are going to get in the Ivy League, like all
whether
that
that's even relevant anymore, though, is the other thing I think about too.
Well, yeah, because if it is, I'm going to have 2 kids simultaneously, like in 15 years. I got to bank a couple $1 million just for that.
I was going to say, if you have them go to Ivy League and you got 2 of them at the same time, 15 years, that's probably $1 million or $2 million by then. You got to have saved up.
Like even not Ivy League, but I'm not paying for everywhere because I teach. People get hated, but I teach over at Monmouth University sometimes, or used to. But like that school's way too expensive for the education and support you get out of it.
Teach there. We shouldn't be saying that.
I teach there, and so like no, I'm not paying $500,000 for you to go to Monmouth. You can forget it. If you want to go, crazy. Sure you can go, but you can figure it out on your own.
Yeah, that's crazy. Jeez.
So anyway, we covered parenting, which is good.
There we go.
Young child parenting, which I'm sure there's a lot of listeners. Does your wife work or no?
Yeah, she does. She's a graphic designer. Not full-time, though. I don't think we could figure out how to do it full-time in the ways we want to. It's a balance to figure out even how to parent at the same time as being able to work. So.
Yeah, but we made the decision. My wife's not working, and it makes it easier, but it's not that much easier because there's still no time at all. So, all right. So, good. I got to figure out where am I going to go from here because that was really fun. That was fun. All right. So, I want to try to let's dive a little bit into Tribe and why you created it. And I think because look, I joined. I guess I was one of the early members without unintentionally.
That's right.
Which was great. But there's been a lot of members since. It's changed a lot. Can I give a little rundown of Tribe and what it is? And I'm going to give my feedback on why you like it.
Yeah, Tribe is a peer network for entrepreneurs doing about 1 million to 10 or 15 million on average. So a lot of SMBs and agency owners is what it tends to be, a lot of ETA folks. But it's a network and a community for people to learn, to make friendships, to network and do business together. I'd been a part of some groups and just didn't feel like any of them quite fit what I was wanting as a founder myself. Being a founder is hard, really hard. Some of the best things that I had coming up were these great mentors and friendships with some good founders, but they were usually way ahead of me, and it just didn't feel like I could reciprocate much at that point. So I wanted to create one for what I felt like was most of my friends and me in these earlier stages, or at least in this more SMB centric world. So yeah, it's been cool. We're 2 years in. We just hit the 2-year mark.
Congratulations. And so my experience has been, one of the things my dad's always said to me, and my dad was an entrepreneur, is like, being an entrepreneur is extremely lonely. Like, you're on your own. You got to make decisions. You got to do your own stuff. But what I found in Tribe that's been great is that everybody's in that same situation. And I think everybody recognizes that being helpful to one another is the surest way to have support coming back the other way. It's like, I put on a note. I haven't been active in the past few months because I've just been dealing with something else. But when I'm active and need something, I put a note out on the Slack, and like, I'll get a whole bunch of responses, and people are willing to give. And it's actually been a tremendous community in that way, Trenton, and I applaud you on building it.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I don't think it was intentional that the vibe would be what it was. Like, I think I've always been sort of giving minded for various reasons. Some of them are probably like rooted in actually like low self-confidence as a founder coming up on it. But at the same time, like, a couple of the people that we brought in early on the leadership side were also that way. And it just became this sort of vibe of like this backyard barbecue where everyone wants to help each other. It's not like we're trying to sell each other. So it's been good. I was a part of a different one that an investor put me in previously that was very much like, let's show off. And everyone's like showing off in front of each other. And that wasn't necessarily the vibe I wanted to be a part of. Part of the reason was like my company at that point was worth millions, but I probably had like $20,000 in my bank account max. I was definitely not anything to show off at that point. It was just a weirder vibe. So I think that, in my mind, when you can create something that is giving minded, then everyone benefits. And it comes around too. Like, definitely more probably comes around from that than trying to just show off or sell or whatever.
I agree. Showing off is mostly a waste of time. The only time it's worthwhile to show off is when someone else is showing off and you want to show off to show them that they're not the only one who matters. Like, I think that's about it.
That's about it, probably. There's you need some credibility in order for people to take you seriously sometimes, but I think you can do it in ways that don't show off. So,
yeah, for sure. Look, there's a fine line between explaining who you are and being confident and bragging, but I find that people try to really cross that, which is great.
Yeah, I haven't seen that too.
So anyways, this isn't an ad for Tribe, guys, but like, hey, if you're interested, email me. I'll put you in touch with Trenton and we'll give you a little intro call. But do it through me because then I get some credit too. So
there you go.
So let's get some members.
Yeah.
So as part of Tribe, you also run these retreats where it's a small number of executive members who go and do something and then have some sessions together around, building your business or whatever it is. Yep. I attended one and it was great. This reminds me, I got a couple of those people I got to reach back to. I haven't spoken in a couple months, but it was great. We did one in Park City. We skied for a day and then we kind of got together. In that conversation, in that session that we had, and I'm not going to kind of disclose kind of like more of the private stuff, I found it really resonated to me what this message that you had there was about what you went through at your business, which was an incredibly fast, insanely high growth business business process outsourcing company, essentially, on more on the marketing side. You had that kind of loneliness, that imposter syndrome, all this stuff. And then you had someone come through who, I'm just going to let you tell it. You might walk through like what, and love to hear that, because that resonated with me in a way that I think small business owners, listeners of Flywheel Effect fans, I think they suffer with that every day. And I think that transition you went through is really critical.
Co-founded a company called Helpware. It actually came in a few months after it had started, sort of right time, right place, but took a massive pay cut to go over there with the hope that this would grow into something pretty big, and it did, luckily. There was a while there where this was essentially a staffing company. We staffed across the globe and also in the States, and kind of came in and they didn't have much process or anything in place, not a ton of marketing. It was in a space where most of the players are multi-billion dollar companies, and sort of this little startup that wasn't really anything. We flailed around $1 million to $3 million for quite a while, which was still a good sized business, but we weren't having much growth and we were running into churn issues and different things. At a certain point though, that business just took off. Within like a year and a half, we went from that 3 million mark to about 40 million. Things really started to catapult and go crazy at a certain point. Right time, right place, everything coalesced and a lot of things came together. I had been lucky enough to have some mentors that I met with, some CEO coaches. One person in particular had helped with some of the Netflix transition from a DVD company to a streaming service, which is a completely different business model. And they became a whole different company at that point, had to transform. And we basically had to transform. It was really me and my co-founder that were doing a little bit of everything. And we didn't have much of a management layer at all. At a certain point, we were forced into a few different decisions that actually helped us a ton. There was one decision, which was we were forced into hiring a bunch of managers to basically help us, to remove us as the bottlenecks for why we weren't growing. A lot of it then meant we had to go learn how to hire the right people, train the right people, and frankly, hire people that were better than us, which is a little bit of an ego thing where it's like, oh, we know how to do everything in our business. How can someone possibly do this stuff better? And honestly, we brought in, I think when we looked at it, it was like 14 or 15 managers, like VP level or C level even, that we had to bring in. And we actually dipped in revenue for a little bit because I don't think we were good at training or empowering or building a training at all for them. Once we realized, hey, we got to actually empower these guys and like, they're not just going to run, then things started to go pretty crazy. But some of the other stuff that we'd really run into that helped the business grow tremendously was this framework thinking through P is like ideal customer profile. Most people think it's who I wish that I could have, who I think I'd be a great customer. But for us and for what we tried to embody, it was like, who's our best customer? Who's the one that's for sure going to give us a 5-star review and be happy with our services? And when we looked at our customers, there was only a select few that were that. Some of the other ones that were running into churn issues, it became clear, hey, we've done a little bit too much of everything for everyone, which is what most businesses have to do at the beginning. But we really narrowed in on customer service, really narrowed in on where we were good, only started selling that. And then there's like a 3-part framework to this. It's part 1 is you identify that ICP. Part 2 is you start building for them and speaking to them. And then part 3 is you leverage the heck out of them. You get reviews, you get referrals, you get upsells, you get testimonials. And so we started just becoming vocal. Like we were very vocal on socials. If you found us on LinkedIn, our whole team was on LinkedIn and we were posting about it every day. We were showing off our team. If you looked on any review site, we realized like, hey, none of our big Goliath competitors are actually like, they don't care about being on these review sites. When you type in top staffing companies, so like these results show up, Clutch, Good Firms, G2, and we're not there, but they're not there. So like, what if we started getting on those, Glassdoor? And we went from a point where we were at like, I don't know, 4 or 5 inbound leads a month maybe, to getting up into like the dozens, and then eventually like way more than that, just by really getting vocal about what we're doing specific to our ICP and showing off our culture, showing off all this stuff that we were doing differently, and embracing this like philosophy. At the time I didn't know what it was, but now I do. Seth Godin wrote a book called Purple Cow, which is like if you see 100 cows in a field and one of them is purple, which one is going to maybe stand out to you and which one's going to make you think about that one and make you like focus on it. We did some Purple Cow marketing at the time compared to the other players in our space. After that, then we started getting tons of upsells, tons of referrals, and things just took off. But a lot of that was because we had investors as well as coaches that came in and challenged my mindset completely. I don't know if that's exactly what you're hoping me to go into.
Yeah, both of these, like that ICP piece is critical, right? And I think this is something people miss. Every single business has an ideal customer profile, right? Like 100%.
Yeah.
And I think home service businesses or anything who think, oh, I just got to take every lead and I got to close it and I got a discount and I got to get it. You kind of figure out who are the people you want to work for.
Yeah.
That are going to deliver the most value to you and drive that message home. Right?
Yeah.
Like what were the attributes that you identified as your ICP?
Well, we went up market though. So like at that time, what we identified for us was these startups that were funded and probably on like a Series C or beyond and needed a team size of a certain thing. They were almost all Silicon Valley types of companies. They cared about culture. We started to identify that was what the ICP was. It wasn't anyone that would send us money. It wasn't these other types of businesses that were coming at us. Eventually we moved up market into like Amazon and some really big companies. But yeah, when we narrowed in, it became way easier because then you can just go target market those people. And I think you're right. Like it still blows my mind how many people, even with successful businesses, successful meaning like $1 to $5 million business, that's hard to get to. 90% of businesses don't get there. Don't know their ICP. I was just talking to a company yesterday that's in the wellness space that couldn't tell you who their ICP is. Couldn't tell you. Right. But they're like a $3 million business. They're pretty new. They're like, we don't know. We're just getting people to buy. I guarantee as soon as they figure that out, they're going to go like this. But they have not figured it out yet.
Yeah, I think it's people. One, because it's also very easy to misidentify an ICP. And people think, oh, how do I do that? Because it's actually got to really look at your customers and it's not just who buys, it's who buys the second time, who gives you a review, who doesn't complain about pricing, who's buying for the reason you like.
And if you get bad reviews, like that's what I think people need to be so careful about. Because if you can start getting bad reviews and reputation publicly, really bad. Like so I had a second company called Station Entertainment. That's an influencer agency. And at the beginning, we didn't know what we were doing, but I was like, let's go get our top influencers that we could possibly get. Like, let's get the ones that we love watching. These are people with like tens of millions of followers. And of course I reach out on day one and crickets. I didn't hear back from them at all. We ended up getting people that were much smaller, but also like really good, had niches. We were able to service them better. They were a few 100,000 followers. And that's how we started, got our wings and then grew. I think back though, I'm like, man, if we'd actually gotten one of those million plus multi-million follower people, we would have flopped very quickly. They wouldn't have been happy. And our whole reputation would have been stunted pretty quickly, probably. Luckily, like we started with who we could service and get a 5-star review from, and then you work your way up from there versus going straight after the one you think that you're going to want. I think you're going to fail most of the time if you're not ready for them. My opinion is find the good reviews. Don't take a customer that you're going to get a bad review from. It's just too much work, too much risk to even embark on that. Work your way up.
Yeah, my brother used to be a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch. And he was like one of the top producers in the country, was training it eventually, everything. And he was talking about some of the people in the office, other people, and they were all like, all they wanted to do was hunt whales, and they turn around business with like, oh, he's only $500,000 account. And Blake was like, dude, I'll take it. And he took it and he serviced the shit out of it and then grew it and got another one and got their friend. And he realized, and it's like, all these people are pissing on that small and medium account because, I only want the $10 million guy it's the whole thing. I spend as much time selling the big one as I do the small one. So that's not ICPing. Right?
No.
Like, and that's, I think, what people do. I think they do it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Most people do that. Is he still at it? He's still going at it?
No, he has another business, Soccer Post. He's killing it again. He's an incredibly smart, capable businessman. But it's like, it's constant of that misidentification where, I want the big diamond as opposed to, it's okay to have a gravel quarry sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I was a chief experience officer, and so I come at it from like the experience lens, but my viewpoint is that great businesses are built on great experiences and they become viral because people start talking about them, and then they do the work for you to grow your business for you. But if you can give great service, that's the best thing you could possibly do to grow a business, better than any sort of marketing. And yeah, which means you got to get honest about like, who can you give that to? Who are you good with? And sometimes that's going to be lower than what you want, but you're going to work your way up by doing that.
What's the process that you go through in your various businesses to identify your ICP?
Well, I think it's interesting because there was in Tribe, we do a book club, and randomly there's a book called Ikigai, which is the Japanese philosophy of essentially not needing to retire and doing the thing that you're good at or that you like to do or that the world needs. I think about it similarly in terms of like a business. You got to look at what you're good at, like what you know how to do. Same thing, look at like what the world needs or what like the open market is. I don't like to go into saturated spaces that I don't have any sort of differentiation. And so I try to find open lanes that make sense and that I know how to service. But like the main frame that I'm looking at with this, there's a couple. One is for like, can I for sure get these clients to give me a 5-star review? If that's a major check mark. The second one is like, do the economics make sense? Does it pay enough? This is something I think I was way naive about. So my first business was actually, I don't know if we'd call it a failure because I don't know that I failed, but I don't have that business anymore. It was a clothing business in college and our margins were like 10%. Like, and I had to sell so many pieces of clothing in order to truly make a business do well. If I wanted that business to do well, I'd be having to sell thousands of pieces of clothing a month. And so the economics are a big part too, is like, is this going to be a $20 customer or like a $2,000 customer or $20,000 customer? The higher up you go, the better off you are, because it takes almost as much effort to get one customer as it does to get a $20 customer as it does to get a $20,000 customer. And so the higher up on the leverage scale you can go, the better. So I've shut down like some amazing business ideas or things that would be intrinsically really motivating to me because I couldn't get the economics to actually make sense. But yeah, if these people that will give you the 5-star reviews will pay you enough and you can actually create a model that gets to the numbers that you're hoping to, that's always what I try to run, is like a model that makes sense.
So that's a little bit more like market segmentation, right? Like, which is different than ICP, your ideal customer profile. Like, say you have identified a good market segment. Actually, that's step one. But within that market segment, how you determine who in that market segment is your ideal customer?
For me, it's still the same frame. It's like, when I look at it, and this is funny because in the influencer world, it's like people don't like to talk about this, but you have to get super specific about the audience, meaning you have to get into like age, you have to get into race sometimes, you have to get into all kinds of things, gender, what they like, all this stuff. So it's still the same frame of like, all right, does the economics make sense? Does the 5-star review make sense? And then if so, who are these people that are going to be that buyer that's going to give you that? And then you need to essentially typecast them as much as you possibly can. Oftentimes it's going to be a specific type of business or a specific type of role, a specific type of geo. So for me with Tribe, what we identified is it's a $500,000 to essentially $15 million, usually SMB or agency. This person is a little bit feeling lonely on their journey. They're probably maybe 3 to 5 years in on their journey. They're in the States. Most of them are actually on the coasts. There's not a ton that are in the middle of the country, although we're going to be expanding. So you just go deeper into like who they are, what's their demographic, and go as deep as you possibly can. But I think a lot of people steer away from typecasting. In the marketing world, we learn that you have to in order to really speak to your people clearly, whether you want to admit it out loud or not. You got to go pretty far and pretty granular in terms of who they are, what their psychoanalysis is, and age, gender, race, all this stuff.
All right. So now let's circle back. At your company, you said when we flipped our ICP, you were about to hit this inflection point where you had this consultant come in, right? And I think that was, the way you described it, that was a huge pivot point for you as far as how you think about your job in running a company.
Yeah, for sure. Up until then, I was just making it up as I went. I was doing what I thought I could do. So when you get these people that have like clearly had a great experience doing and building big things and changing the frames, I latched on to frameworks pretty quickly, and now I'm a big frameworks thinker and have created my own. But yeah,
what did this guy say? Like that, what was the trigger? What did he come in to do, and what did he tell you?
In my mind, I have a few different ones that were super pivotal to me. There wasn't just one. It wasn't just one conversation, but there was a few that were really game-changing to me. One of the first ones was in the sales side. Generally, we took a sales call and let it go in the ways that we wanted it to go. And then, like most salespeople, we would just follow up afterwards. Hey, wanted to see if you're still interested in this. And then crickets on most of those sales calls. This guy had built this framework and had a team where I was shocked to learn that even though he was one of the best salespeople I've ever met, he wasn't taking any sales calls. I was like, what? And he had a team of dozens of people doing the sales process for him. And essentially, there was a few different main rules that they had. After every call, they had to make sure that they had a next call set up. And they had a clear 4-step process on their sales side. That went from discovery to a scoping to a proposal call to a kickoff call. Whereas most people on the sales process are just going to have, hey, it's the first call, which we'll call a discovery, and we're going to follow up until we hopefully get them to close. And if it's the right time, they'll come in. What I found with this process is like he forced them through. And if they said no at a certain point, they knew on that call that they weren't going to move to that next thing. And these guys were closing hundreds of deals, like hundreds. It was crazy. And so that frame really shifted my mindset of how we do sales. And I went from me being the only salesperson to eventually having a team of over 10 people doing that sales process. That allowed the sales function to scale like crazy. On the ICP side, the recognizing who our ICP was meant that we needed to speak clearly to them. So what we started to do, because at the time Silicon Valley was very much about culture. Funny enough, like now these companies, Meta, are laying off like crazy, and I don't know that they're about culture anymore. But back then they were. So we just started showcasing our awesome parties, our really cool people, our amazing offices that we had. We were in person, and I actually still believe in person is probably a better way to do business. But we had these really great cultures. So we just showed it off, and our ICP really like latched onto it. What I started to hear on the sales calls really quickly is like, we liked you, we saw you on socials because it seems like you treat your people super well and you're different and you have fun. And we really embodied like the core values that ICP wanted. And then the third conversation that I think was really pivotal to me was like, hey, you're your own bottleneck, and you have to, if you want this business to, I honestly don't think I thought that the business could get to the level it got to. I was young and I think I wanted to sell. We were starting to get some private equity interest. And I didn't think we were going to be able to scale into this, like, hey, we're going to be a serious player in this space. And so when they challenged us of like, hey, you have to hire people that are better than you, I had a little bit of an ego, I think, more of just like insecurity. And we were forced into it. That was probably the best thing that happened to us, right? Like we hired all these people. I remember sitting in a meeting with my co-founder a few months later after we started growing like crazy. And neither of us said a word the entire meeting. It was like there's like 15 VPs in there, and neither of us had to say a word, even though we've been the ones that control everything up until that point. And being like, this is pretty crazy. Right. Company's running without us, and it doesn't even need us, like, you know. But yeah, like all three of those, they're three different people, and we'll call them mentors, and three different like ways that they approach different sides of it. But all three of those were pivotal in order to grow that business like crazy. And that's what like people always like, oh, what's the thing that like helped you to grow? It wasn't one thing. It was all these things kind of coalescing at once that came together. But they are very specific frameworks that you can follow, and I still believe like other businesses can follow. Because then when I took it into my next business, we grew way faster than I ever did in my first business.
I think that because your first business, it took you a while to figure things out because you didn't have anything. Now that you knew them, you applied them immediately and were able to go. And almost like that second chance is what really proved that these things are right to you. I would imagine.
Yeah. Luckily, I was able to advise some other businesses and see them follow the same thing, and it worked again. So it's like, all right, these frameworks work, and they're not necessarily mine. They've worked for me.
But you said something in the last one. I think there was one more piece, but you said, "You're your own worst bottleneck."
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Well, we were just doing a little bit of everything because we were such control freaks, but also didn't trust and didn't build good trainings and all that. And so when you're doing that, like, you can't focus all your attention everywhere. Well, like I can't focus 100% of my attention on marketing, which is where we probably needed to spend most of it. I also couldn't focus it on the customer experience, you know, in the ways I need to by myself, and into the sales world by myself. Every minute that I spent in sales is taking me away from marketing, which is taking me away from customer experience. And what we ended up doing, actually, this was a big framework shift too for me. We went from essentially like firefighting every day of like, hey, what's the problem we need to solve today and how do we go solve it? A lot of that would just pop up on a daily basis, to getting to a point where you start time blocking this stuff out and only doing the things that you're really good at and hiring out the stuff that you're maybe not quite as good at or that needs more attention and needs more time. The going from a firefighting to like a more of a planned schedule, one of the best things that we could do. There's a lot of things I look back on. One of the other things that was really helpful for us is we implemented an accountability framework, kind of like EOS, but it was called MAP. And it was not easy to go through. The guy was kind of militaristic, but it forced us into making sure that we measured what we were trying to hit in terms of goals. And you have to get really structured for that.
When you were told you're the bottleneck, how did you allow yourself to move out of that?
Well, honestly, I was forced. Like it wasn't like I had much choice. They're like, hey, you have to hire these people.
Who said that? Your investors or
investors?
Okay.
Yeah, I came on as a co-founder afterward. I was not majority founder of that business. But yeah, the investors forced it, which was a good move by them. Like, didn't want to do it at the time, but great move.
So for founders who don't have any outside money, I would say there's a majority of them, especially ones that kind of hit a ceiling, are their own bottleneck, right? Like, it's so common. How do they break through?
You have to have, like, for me, like, you have to have either a conversation with someone that's been there that can open your eyes to it, which is what I kind of needed. you either hit, like Tony Robbins says, like you hit inspiration or desperation. So you're either going to be inspired by something that like, you're like, okay, I see this, I want to go do this, I need to change how I'm doing it. Or you're desperate because things are definitely not working and you hate how they're going. One of those two probably has to be true. But generally I've found that like talking to people that have been there and done that can show you the way, that open your eyes of like, hey, because most people think that if they just keep doing the same thing over and over, it eventually like will keep working. In my experience, that phrase of like, what got you here will not get you there is completely true. The founder you have to be from 0 to 1 is so different from 1 to 5. And then that's so different from 5 to 20. And then that one's so different from 20 to 50. And I haven't even been beyond those, but I'm sure it's way different beyond that. Step of that, you have to transform. And a lot of people either can't, and that means they should hire the people that can help them get there. They want to grow. And I think being honest about what you want is also important here.
Yeah, because I talk to a lot of business owners that, they're just working really hard. Some of them figure it out and they're like, hey, I've got this figured out. I have great people. I let them do their jobs. And there's other ones that are like, no, I have to handle every sale, right? Like, or, I have to do this. And I'm like, why? Oh, it's just because I'm the best at it. I'm like, okay, but is that what's best for your business? And it's almost never the case. But, hey, if you want to run a nice little $1 million, $2 million business that you are everything, that's totally fine. And I think that is admirable, but that's not what they express.
Yeah. I think that it's important then for them to be honest about their goals. Because you're right. Like a lot of people maybe stagnate because they don't truly want that goal that they're talking about. Like, for me, I was very clear about what I wanted. I wanted to sell my business. So I knew that in order for that to happen, I had to change. Like what I was doing wasn't going to sell. And a lot of these people are comfortable probably, where like that's one of the hardest things is when you're comfortable, you're not going to grow very much because you don't have to and don't want to anymore. You got to be very clear about what you want.
So I think there's one other piece to this story though. I think it was that last one who said you're your own bottleneck, is I think that also identified the area where a founder or owner or CEO or whatever needs to focus, which is kind of that outward facing role, right? Like I think part of it was you're your own bottleneck because you're trying to do the work in the business, when in reality you should be on the outside trying to grow it, right? Is that the right way, Frank?
Yeah. It's funny too, because how much my mindset shifted. Because I remember at that time when I was like in founder mode at the beginning, I thought, a good founder does a little bit of everything. They're super active in their business. And then as we started trying to sell, getting closer to that, we started interviewing CEO candidates and just looking at other people that were CEOs and started to realize like, it's interesting. Most of these CEOs do not want to get in the weeds. They won't get in the weeds. They have assistants, but they're really good at being the face. They're really good at like, building relationships, but they're not like doing a lot. They're really just like letting the team run and they're empowering that team to run. Before I was a founder, I was part of a very fast growing SaaS company that sold for, I don't know, a couple $100 million. And that CEO would show up in his Porsche, but everyone loved him. He'd only show up like once or twice a month and like everyone loved him. He was just great at culture, but he like was definitely not in the weeds, at least when I was there in that growth period. And that worked. And so I think one of the things that was pointed out to us too is like, hey, you got to get out of the weeds first off, but you got to get yourself more into this like seat that you're super visible and that you're more of the culture setter and you're just doing the relationships and glad handing and like the public persona essentially. And at the time I didn't think there was almost any value in it. Like I was like, this is so stupid. There's no value in that. Like, but started to see like, no, that's completely not the truth. That you need that like figurehead at the front that really does drive that persona and drive the culture and gets people motivated to want to work there, but also want to work with you. And that it's hard to put a value on it, but that's where the founder needs to be living, is very visible for the world in order for that business to get seen, which means that they can't be in that operator seat if they truly want to grow. And I'd argue that some of the CEOs that are still getting paid super high are actually maybe underpaid still. Like they're a big reason why that company is growing the ways that they want, even though they're not the one actually coding the stuff or doing the work, but they're driving that business. So that's a mindset shift I had to come to, and I still stand by. I think it is tricky though when you're at this smaller business stage of how do you know when that time is to go do that.
And I think because there's a certain point like below call a couple $1 million where you can't have a giant team. Right? It's just impossible. You just can't afford it. You just don't have the money because people, there's a fixed cost to people. But then there's an inflection point. You have to make a decision is, do I want to grow? And who am I going to hire first to take which part of this off of my plate? But that first hire, you have to be willing to let them take it off of your plate, right? Like you can't be, I'm going to have them, but I'm still going to do it. And like accounting, I don't want to waste money on an accountant or a bookkeeper. I could just do it myself at night. Like, no, you can't. It's going to suck. You're going to do a terrible job. You need to sleep. You need to work hard during the day, or if you're actually out there in the field. You need to be willing to pay, call it $40,000 a year, and it doesn't have to be full-time all the time, person to handle your books. And that's totally fine. And take that off your plate. And then maybe the next thing is like, man, I have to do some outbound, find some leads and talk to people. I need to hire a salesperson or at least a kind of an SDR person to do outreach. And I can't talk to everybody. And then you can realize I can't close every deal. So maybe I do that or whatever it is. Or maybe you got to hire high tech. I don't know. But you got to let people do their jobs.
Yeah.
I think there's a balance though, right? There's a balance between, call it delegating and abdicating, where you still have to learn how to manage that person and their job and make sure they're performing as opposed to just like hands off.
Yeah, hands off's not the way. Getting very radical with your candor is the way. A weekly cadence meeting where you go through the good, the bad, what they need to improve, and empower them to come up with ideas, I think is really a great framework here. That company grew to over a couple thousand employees, so we had to get really good at accountability programs, meaning you had to get very structured. Most companies operate too loosely where it's like, hey, this person's doing really good in like 80% of their job, but they're doing terrible in 20%, so we'll keep them. Meanwhile, the rest of your team notices that you're letting this stuff slide, and it can create these bad problems with the culture. And so the easiest way to combat this is to just make sure you're talking about it and you're working through it, and you don't keep letting that slide, which just means you have to have that weekly or whatever, some sort of accountability structure in order to make sure that they either improve or get moved out or switch to a different role.
What do you say to a founder who says, I don't have time for that?
An accountability meeting?
Yeah.
Then your business is not going to go very far. I think that's a very like rookie founder mentality, because the best businesses are the best empowerers of people. It's like they have great people in the core of it, and that the people have to have a great framework and structure in order for that company to grow. Otherwise, your company's going to always be capped.
I know we have a hard stop coming up, Trenton.
Yeah.
But this has been really fun. Like anything else you'd like to add here? And then at the end, say, how do people get in touch with you?
I mean, that's like pulled out a lot of my frameworks, so I appreciate us going there. Yeah, get in touch with me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on X, Trenton Hughes on LinkedIn.
All right. And TribeHQ.com? Like, let's throw it out there.
Yeah, actually, it's TribeHQ.co is what we have.
Okay, good. You correct.
Yeah. Put me on.
No, this has been great. Thanks for joining. This has been great. For me, Trent, this conversation is one of those ones where if you listen to it properly, it's incredibly actionable, even though maybe it sounds more theoretical.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
I hope so too.
I try to think in frameworks, and hopefully.
Well, thanks for joining us, Trenton. As always, the Flywheel Effect. If you'd enjoyed this podcast, please give us a like, a follow, 5-star review. And if you know someone who finds some value, please share it with them as well. So until next time, it's the Flywheel Effect. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to the Flywheel Effect. Our journey through the intricate world of luxury home services continues to be fueled by your passion for excellence and innovation. If you found value in our conversations today, don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. More insights and resources. Visit us online at growwithvital.com. Until next time.